My name is Tara Cloud Clark, and I was present at VirtuousCon in, well, it's not in, it was online, the Juneteenth edition, June 19th through 20th, 2021. And I created a virtual booth for a client who is an independent publisher of books, comics, anthologies of short stories, board games or tabletop games, and then RPG games. And I wanted to capture my experience because I wanted to have it just for myself and to show my client, just in case somebody else ever does anything, and we can look at ways to improve upon it. And then I also wanted to post it on YouTube and other social media so that people would have access to it, because I was searching for ideas and didn't find anything. So I thought maybe other people would too. So this is titled How to Design a Virtual Convention Booth. A lot of the principles are going to be the same, whether you're at a Comic-Con or you're at a trade show. You just want to take the foundation and build from that based on your own goals and your own brand and identity, and that sort of thing. So we'll get started. Yes. I'm trying out Zoom, basically on a call with myself, video screen recording. So a little bit about VirtuousCon. It is a new con. It is surrounding sci-fi and comic culture. This is the second edition. The first one was in February, and the main focus is to provide a platform for Black artists and authors to show their wares in just basic nerd culture. You may have heard the term blurred culture. It's Black nerd. So this is a con specifically for that. You can see it is created by Cerise Renee Murphy, a lovely woman, and I'll talk about her in a little bit more. And then, as I mentioned, let me move that, especially for Black and Indigenous people of color creatives. So not just Black, but that is where it started. So you may think, well, why was Tara there? Because she's a white girl. And I'm not really a creator per se, not in the main focus type of thing. So the reason I was there is because my client was there and their logo isn't loading, which is cool. Outland Entertainment, I told you what they do. But again, it's a bunch of white people. So great white people, but you know, why are they there? Well, three main reasons. We do spec fiction, which is in line with the convention's goals. Cerise is a friend of ours. She's actually editor for one of our publications, Where the Veil is Thin, and that's her. She's pretty, and she's super nice, and she's smart and professional, and she's just incredible. And then our core values, this hits two. One, we facilitate the arts in general, just whoever. And you'll notice on our social media and the things that we do, we promote people, especially, you know, our artists and authors, but we promote just art and author in general. And then our core value number 3 is that we advocate to make sure that there is representation of underrepresented people, not only in the characters that we create, but also in having artists and authors of color and other diverse backgrounds. So, and including intersectionality. So why were we there? Even though we're a bunch of white people? For those 3 reasons. We align with it. And Cerise was wonderful at welcoming us, and we felt very welcomed at the con. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into it. Before you design a booth, you may have kind of an idea of what you want, and I'll show you my first idea because I deviated quite a bit from it. But you need to make sure that you kind of get a foundation of what you want to do before you start making images for it. So the goals and focus are going to be pretty much the same as if it was an in-person booth. You want to have a good visual presentation. Of course, you want to have your product there. You want to have information there. You want to have a host, someone to welcome. You know, you want to say who you are, what you do, so that people don't stand there for 5 minutes trying to figure out what the heck you do and why you're even there. So that would be true whether it was an in-person Comic-Con type thing or if it's a virtual convention. You also want to serve your audience. You need to understand who your audience is, and depending on the situation, this may be specific to your brand, which, you know, we know who our audience is and who we're targeting. But the con itself may be, you know, have its own goals or its own audience. So you need to understand who may or may not be there is most likely to buy your stuff, and that's your target audience. And then know what resources you have available to you. Of course, know your budget. If it's minimal, then you're going to have to get creative and probably put a lot more hours into it. Know what technology you have available to you. And in this case, the convention, like, you need to understand the platform that you're going to be using. And I'm going to go into the platform that the VirtuousCon uses. It's called Remo, I think. And then know what staff you have available and what their strengths are and goals are and that sort of thing. Again, whether you're doing it virtually or you're doing it in person, these are things that you should know before you walk in. And as Outland prepares for Planet Comic-Con in August in Kansas City, which we're so excited about, it will be a physical presentation. We're going to hopefully integrate some technology into it, which is super cool. I'm very excited about it. But, you know, we need to reassess all of that because we can't just transport one thing to another place, especially since we're doing virtual to in person. But we also have different audiences, and we have different people who are going to be there. And by that time, we'll have different recent publications and, you know, things that we're promoting. And who knows what this world is going to be like. It's only a month and a half away, 2 months away. That's a long time for a lot of craziness to happen. And then the very last point that you need to know before going into it and really starting to design what you want it to be is to know your goals. What do you want to accomplish? Are you wanting to network? Are you needing, like in our case, you'll see later, we were needing a certain type of creative that we were hiring, and it was a great place to do it because of the target audience. Again, you'll see. But, you know, or do you want to sell, you know, all of your back stock? Or do you want to get free copies of your newest release into the hands of people that are there so that they'll review it and put it online? You know, there could be many goals. You do need to try to limit them, but you need to stay focused on those goals so that everything you're about, from the way it looks when someone walks up to the things that you hand them, to the conversations you have, and to how you operate when you leave the booth, all of that is going to be encompassed in those goals. Okay, so this is the floor of, yeah, Remo. I guess that's how you say it, of VirtuousCon. I think it visually, I understood it when I first got into it. For the most part, you know, it wasn't too confusing. And, you know, there are definitely some things that I'd like to see improved. But for the most part, we've got the floor, just like when you would walk into a convention and you'd see the booths. These are the booths. These are the individual booths. It looks like a little table with some chairs. It's a little space agey themed. So that's cool. Colors are good, that sort of thing. On the edges, these are the special events, the panels and masterclass series, that sort of thing. So when you first walk in, like, you can kind of see at least those two things. I'm going to point out some of the features of the I guess it's kind of like a desktop thing. In the top left, this number right here, that is how many people are in the entire conference, as far as I know, because it doesn't look like there's 35 people there. I do not know for sure if that includes the people who are in the panels and the master classes. I suspect it doesn't, just because it stayed between 30 and 50 the whole time, and usually right at 40. And then this timer right here is for whenever the floor is about to close for the day. It'll give you an alert that says you've got an hour left, and then there will be the timer. And then, like I said, over on these two sections, these are the master classes and the panels and special events. And here is the booth. This one specifically is Outland Entertainment. Now, Alana, who is also works for the publisher, she said that in the February edition, they had people sitting in these seats. So there were like the booth hosts that could sit in the seats. That didn't happen this time, and I don't know why. It wasn't too much of a trouble, except for there's a seat limit of 6, so only 6 people can be in the room at the time. And there's access, so anybody can like do stuff to the whiteboard. I left a little Post-it note on a friend's whiteboard before he even started doing it, and I'll get into what the whiteboard is later. So those two things are a little like, you know, I'd like more people to be in there, although in a virtual conference, like having 6 people in a room, like on Zoom, having 6 people, more than 6 people in a room is where it's gonna start getting bad. So pros and cons. It was fine. These two areas are lounges, and I think they're kind of a good place to go when you don't want to go to a booth, because as soon as you go to a booth, you know, people are going to try to engage or think that you want to engage. So you may want to go there to, you know, work or whatever. Here's a help desk, which there isn't always someone there, but you can leave a message. Let's see. Okay, that's showing my booth again. Up here is, you know, your profile information, just like with most platforms. And you can see my icon there. I never got around to putting a profile picture on there. I wish I had, in part because I'm white and that wasn't obvious, and it should have been. But I tried, and the picture that I always use was too big. So, which was that's a little frustrating, because I just didn't want to go back and work on compressing that and that sort of thing. So over here to the left, you see the floors. Looks like there you can have up to 10. We only had 3. We were on the 2nd floor, so when you want to go to another floor, you just click on that, or you can click on the elevators. I never used that. Bottom left, you've got the cam on, mic on. I don't think I ever looked at the selections. I decided to do this to capture these screens, well, 20 minutes before the con was going to close. And once it's closed, you can't access the platform anymore or your whiteboard. So I was kind of rushed trying to make sure I took all of the pictures that I could and did all the features that I could. There's where you can chat. And I'll go into this a little bit more, but there were 3 different ways to chat. 1, you could chat with everybody in the whole con. 2, you could chat with just the people at your table. And 3, you could chat with individuals that were at the con. You could do screen share, which we did utilize at one point, or 2 points maybe. The whiteboard is how you actually go into your booth or into somebody else's booth. And of course, quit the event. Once you hit click on whiteboard, it takes you into the booth. And I'll go over some of the features of that. So first of all, if you have your camera on, you'll see your video right here. In the next slide, I think I've got where it shows there's more than one person. The whiteboard now actually, I think it started with education, or was created for education. So it's a way to present lots of information and media in one place. I first heard about it when I was doing education, my master's in education. So I assume that's where it came from, but I do know that, like, I mean, in my job where I was working for Walmart, like they use it in their office or in their meetings now. So it's much more widespread, but basically it's just a place where you can do a presentation. You can have the actual hardware whiteboard that looks like a whiteboard, but it's technology, and you can, you know, write on it and touch it and that sort of thing. So when you go into the whiteboard, you can create things. You know, there's just some basic tools to use. You've got, you know, the grabber or cursor, you've got text, you've got shapes, you've got sticky notes, arrows. You can put comments in, draw on it, create an area, which is really important, and that'll come up in a bit. And then you can upload, and there's different things that you can upload. There's also, if you, on the right side, and I'll show you on the next screen, there will be board settings, so you can change the background of the board. That is pretty limited. It was a little more limited than I would have liked. So you put your name there of your booth, and then you can choose a color, or they have a select number of textures that you can put in the background, which is good because it makes it less busy. A lot of people would probably put some huge image and not make it work. I know how to make it work, so I really wanted to use some of Outland's gorgeous artwork, but I decided not to, or I wasn't able to. So here's another way of looking at it. Some of the functions that were on that last one, or weren't on that last one, are on this one. So at this time, we had a play testing of a new game that we're making that Carlos Hernandez and Claire CSE Cooney are developing. And we had several people in the room. We had Alana, who is on the staff. She's our editor-in-chief. We had Michael, who is one of the artists that we work with. And he just basically hung out at the booth all day and did art, just like you would see at a Comic-Con. And then here you see Fatima. She was a visitor to the booth, and she wanted to do the play testing. So they did the play testing. So up here, our icons with our names. Remember when we looked at the floor, you saw my TC. That's what it looked like. Well, this is what it looks like when it's here. There are these functions right here where you've got the board. What was that last thing I saw? Board settings and other things. I didn't really use any of the other things. And of course you can download it. I did use that download function. It wasn't super great. My screenshot was better just because I could control it. And then at the bottom right, these are really important icons. This one in the middle specifically is to put you in presentation mode. And I'll go over that in just a bit. Now, these screenshots that I'm taking were on my laptop. It may, so like you can see how crowded it is right here. It may not look like this on larger screens. So, and you may be able to see more people. Also, something I don't think I have in this presentation is if you X out, it'll take you to the floor show, but you're still technically in the booth. So your icon is still there for everybody to see. And the videos are still there for everybody to see. And you will see everybody's video on your screen more like a Zoom call. And there are 2 different ways that you can, or 3 maybe, different ways that you can look at those videos. Okay, so some of the things I didn't get to screenshot were the text options. They're pretty standard. And for the record, just for branding consistency, I only used 2 texts, which were Anton and Arial fonts. And I also used those in this presentation, even though it was a different platform. The object options, again, pretty much the same. Something that I did use a lot was the transparent option. So instead of making it a color like the outline or the fill, instead of making it a color, I made it a transparent color. And I did that to try to use some hyperlink options, but as you can see over here, wasn't a huge fan. So I'm going to talk about hyperlinks right now because I don't think later I can. The best way that I can tell to use hyperlinks is just to use them in the text, because if you try to hyperlink an object, or if you try to like one of your images, like we have books, so you know our book image, or I used even a transparent object to put over like for our social media, it just puts this symbol in the top right corner. And so to me, it didn't feel like it was any more effective than the text itself being hyperlinked. And I felt like people were more familiar with a hyperlinked text than they would be with this icon. And it was kind of ugly. And I mean, you know, we are a visual company. It's kind of what we do. So I wanted to make sure it looked as clean as possible. And there were some issues with it looking clean because of the platform itself. But that wasn't VirtuousCon, that was probably Remo, and I will be submitting notes because I do think it's actually a really great platform and I want to see it better. So some more, we're in the whiteboard here. I just have a close up of it. So in the top left, you can see this says booth overview, check out our new interview series. These are areas that I'd created and I put titles on them. And then, oh, don't look at that. And then the titles over here show up and they show up in order. Now I talked about presentation view. When somebody goes into presentation view, when you have areas set up like this, it takes that person to the areas as you want them to see this. So the very first thing I did was create, well, this isn't the first thing I did, but the first area I have on here is a booth overview. And once they see the overview, they see all the things that are there, then they click at the bottom here, they can click to the right, they can see that there's 21 areas, which also helps. So you click on the right and it takes you to the next area, which you can see up here says, welcome to Outland, it's right here. So you can move through these areas just by clicking to the right and left. Or you can, if you think, oh, I need to go back and see what their new releases are, you can scroll through, click on the new releases, and it will take you there. And then when you're creating the areas, you use these up and down arrows to decide where you want them to go in order. And something that I really wanted to do, and I couldn't figure out how to do it, and I even asked tech, and I don't know if they didn't understand what we're saying or they just didn't know. But what I wanted to do was when someone came into the whiteboard, I wanted them to see something first, like the Outland logo first, or the overview, whichever it was, because it kind of seemed random. I think there was a reason for it, but I don't know what it was. Whenever I go into anybody's whiteboard, it wouldn't necessarily take me to a centralized place. But I think maybe this thumbtack would allow me to pin something, and that is the way it would work. Again, I did this 20 minutes before. I didn't even think about this till the next day, so I didn't get a chance to check it. Okay, so originally the design, I thought, hey, it would be really cool if I found an image in Canva that was a booth, and then I kind of set up things to make it look like it was an actual booth. I thought that would be good for the experience and just kind of like reminiscent of an actual con and that sort of thing. Canva had very few options, and I'm hesitant to pull anything off. Plus, like I said, I couldn't do the background with a specific image, and I felt like that would be best, is to somehow make the whole background the booth, just to give it that more immersion. But that's not work. So this was kind of the basic idea. But then I thought, you know what? This is what I would kind of make it look like in person. These are the elements I would want, how I would want it arranged, how I would want people to walk through the booth. And so I need to basically think about it from the same place. You know, we need to have this information available and need it to look a certain way and kind of look like shelves, you know, that sort of thing. So, so this, even though I deviated from this and it's super cheesy and dumb looking, it still allowed me to kind of frame the way I wanted my booth to look, which you've already seen. But so some just initial basic thoughts. Make sure that your booth has stuff to buy, because that's why they're there. I would also encourage you, and I say this later too, especially with creators, to have a tip jar of some sort, because somebody may not necessarily be interested, but they still may want to support you, especially if they get to talking to you and they really like you and they think what you're doing is awesome. Not interesting to me, but whatever, you know, they may want to tip you. And I think that's it, from my experience, especially like with on Clubhouse, like that's become a much more standard to tip people, to just say, hey, thank you for your thoughts, or thank you for this lesson, even though you gave it free, I want to give you some money. So stuff to buy in a tip jar. Ways to browse. So, you know, like sending them to the website or showing them a video or whatever. And then make sure that purchasing is super easy for them, that you get them straight there. You don't have to give them long directions. If they can buy it right there, I don't think it's set up to do that. I'm pretty sure there's no way to set it up to do that, but make sure that your links go directly to as directly as possible to what they might want to buy. Give ways to connect. So make sure all your social media is on there, your website, your newsletter. We've got a Discord channel that we're promoting now. So all of those ways, again, some sort of tip jar, PayPal, something like that. Venmo, yeah, etc. Conversation starters. So one of the booths that I saw had some ice-breaking questions, which were pretty fun. You know, like, you know, what superpower would you have if you could, that sort of thing. So you could do it like that. You could just have some gorgeous artwork, which is what we specialize in. So that's definitely something we would want on there. You could have one of the booth hosts had pictures of him at cons, you know, like stuff like that, just stuff to make it more personal. You know, some people like want to have a conversation, but they're not really sure how to start, and they don't want to go into every booth and be like, so tell me about yourself, you know, like they just, you know, just give them an opportunity to find something to talk about, basically. And then of course, stuff to look at, visual cues, make sure your booth is clean and interesting. It's not just the same thing over and over and over and over again. It's not tons of information, you know, it's little sections, little bites, that sort of thing. Oh my goodness, and I have a spelling error there. My apologies. By the way, the quality of this is not intended to be high. It's just intended to be informative. Okay, so some design suggestions. Again, like I mentioned, make sure you know what you're there for, what you want to accomplish, and stay focused on that. Keep it simple. You can put stuff on there, a lot of stuff, but try to keep it simple, especially visually simple. Use color blocks, large visuals to add overall visual interest. And you'll see with mine, I've got large images and smaller images and that sort of thing in a variety of different types of media. Again, use variety, but keep it to a minimum and aligned with your brand. Make sure it speaks back to you and your stuff. Have a central hub for certain things, but then also think about how people can access the same thing in different ways. So like we have a Kickstarter that started right before this con. And so we featured it in the coming soon to Kickstarter, and of course it's live. We featured it in another section, and we featured it in another section, but in different ways. Like we didn't just say Kickstarter, Kickstarter, Kickstarter. We said Kickstarter here, comic series here, world here, you know, like we did it in different ways. And then we had the creator actually was one of the events in our booth. He was actually present for a conversation if possible. So that's yet another way. Make sure it's clear what people need to do at your booth to view your booth. So we go back, and I'll probably talk about it later, but at this top here, this is not an area, so it's not going to be part of this journey, but it's more like when people come in, wherever they start, if they back out, they see that welcome, maybe they'll use display mode, which I think is actually called presentation mode, whatever. So just, you know, try to give as much guidance as possible and make it as easy as possible for them. And then, like I said, make sure from them to buying your stuff is as close as possible. So 1 link if possible, 2 at the most. Make sure everything's very visible. A lot of the booths that I went to, I couldn't read what was on their screen without zooming in. And you want to make people do as little work as possible because people don't want to do work. Oh, that's what I said next. Yeah, do the work for the audience. Don't make them search. Don't make them question unless you want them to question about a specific thing. Don't make them click a lot. Don't make them have to zoom in and out, etc. Don't make them read. People don't like to read. Even readers don't read. They just don't. In fact, I bet those of you watching this didn't even read everything I've got on here. And if you did, you weren't listening. So you would rather someone listen to you than read. But so if you do need to put in any kind of information or descriptions on there, make sure they're small, cut into small blocks of writing, and of course, engaging. Have a call to action. Let them know what you want them to do. Know your audience, know what they're interested in, and of course, know your brand and stick to it. Don't try to be somebody else for this purpose. Be you consistently and powerfully. Yeah. Okay, so this was slide 1. since it's a presentation, we all call them slides. As you can see, the labels of the areas are here. That's one of my pet peeves about this. I would like for those labels to not be on there. So in some cases I have areas, but I don't have labels because it was just cluttering it up. So one of the important parts about having an overview like this is just like, and this is something I learned in master's and when I was getting my master's in education, and I realized that it's just true everywhere. When you're communicating with someone, it's really important to kind of give them a big picture, endpoint, this is where we're going, this is how we're getting there. And I've applied this whenever I'm teaching my friends to play games, board games, because I love board games. I have over 150, and I love playing with people, and I love introducing them to people because most people have played Monopoly and Sorry, and we all, you know, hopefully you know that there's way more out there. So I say, you know, like, this is a game about this. The object of the game is this. And to do that, to get to that place, you have to do this and this, this. So this overview page does that. Like, the object of the game is for you to know more about Outland Entertainment, and we've got a variety of things, right? To do that, you need to use display mode or presentation mode. So I've got that in there. And in the overall presentation, I was very conscious about blocks of color, large visuals, different kinds of visuals. You can see it's obvious these are books and that sort of thing over here. We've got our beautiful Outland logo. We've got some media over here that it looks like it's probably like a YouTube channel. It is. And then we've got blocks of color. We've got pictures of people. We've got a very different artwork here. We've got another logo here and another logo here, of course. So we've got that variety. It's fuzzy here, but this is social media. So you can see everything you need to see all at once. You know, okay, at some point this will be over. It feels like it's going on forever. There were some booths that didn't do this type of thing, and it seemed to go on and on and on and on and on. And I would look down and there would be like 127 slides, and it was a little overwhelming, and they were all the same. And yeah, there's more to it than that, but I wanted to make sure that people knew what to expect when they were going in. Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, I said all that. Okay, so the whole whiteboard, I'm guessing, would have been, like, if I filled the whole whiteboard up, it would have been about this big. Honestly, if I'd scaled these images larger, it probably, I could have filled the board, but I didn't feel a need to. And the way the areas work is when you click to the next one, it zooms in on that area so that that area fills the screen. So it really doesn't matter how big they are, just more how they work in the screen. I did, however, use some of this other area over here to, like, I put a sticky note down and I started typing out whenever someone would visit the booth, I would put their name in their booth, if they were from another booth. And so I would go, you know, make sure I'd go visit them later. I tried to visit every booth anyway. But if I'd had more time, I only had a few days to actually put this together. If I'd had more time, I would have had kind of a staging area because we had different events, and I really needed materials prepared for those events. And I could have, like, just put them over there, locked them, maybe even covered them up. And then when it was time, unlock them and move them into the overview area and made them part of it. I'm not sure what those images are. So I don't know. I don't know what those are for. Okay, well, can I get straight to presentation? I don't think so. So I'll have to Sorry. Okay, oh good. Just went ahead and set me there. Ignoring all of those weird objects. Oh, those are supposed to be arrows. Are you kidding? I spent so much time on those and the arrows didn't even come through. Let me see if I can refresh and get back to it. Okay, good. Yeah, so you can see I spent a lot of time on it. So just to remind you, when you create an area, it becomes part of that list, the pop-up list, which is accessible through here. And then you can navigate through what's on the bottom there. So it would start as the overview. So it would show you the whole picture like you're seeing right now, hopefully. And then it would take you to the Outland logo, just so you could see it and it'd be burned into your retinas. Then take you down and then over and then around. And it is, you know how in some games, like I know Civilization had this, you can choose for it to, you know, follow a path over there or just like immediately transport you. So this structure follows the path. I don't know if there was the option or not. I like the following the path because it makes it more dynamic and more like you're moving around. So yeah, so basically the order that I had all of these in, there were themes and areas and sections basically, but they kind of, you know, went around. So you can see it goes down and then over to our, this is our about, to our social media, to our booth, event schedule, and then to some of our publications, new releases, that sort of thing. And then it would take us all the way over here. Of course, it would beeline to there. Yeah, and then over here, and then so forth. And then these things, I don't think they were in any of the previous slides. These are additional things that I added that were part of the booth events. So we had a play testing. We had Michael, who was sitting there drawing most of the time. And we had one of the authors, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, but once you add an area, it puts it on the navigation list. And so it cycles through there. I hope all that was clear. If I thought, I would have taken like a screencast of it or whatever. Talked about the directions so that people would say, oh, I need to use this. Most people already knew it because they had their own booths. Okay, so now I'm going to go slide by slide just to show you. I'll point out some things, and in the top left is the overview, and then I'll have a circle around the slide that we're talking about, and of course the arrows pointing to what it looks like. So first, let's go back. So first we had the logo, like I said, to burn it onto your retinas, so it becomes more familiar. About Outland Entertainment, again, people don't like to read. Even though they saw this slide, they still would say, so what are you, you know? This is almost directly pulled from our website, but I tried to make it even more like choppy so that at very least they would read the first sentence and be like, okay, that's what they are. They're a publisher. And then maybe they would read more and get more details, and then more details, and then more details. So we have the basic like pitch, and then we have a little more detail of what we have. And then we have a lot more of the who we are type of thing. And then there's a call to action at the bottom if they get that far. Cool. Something else I would have liked to see is having a go-to section option. So you could hyperlink things, but I would have liked to have like this at the bottom of this graphic says booth schedule. I would have liked to have hyperlinked that so that it took you to the booth schedule. that's on that page. But only option I saw was to send it out off the page, out of the platform completely. Let's see. So we had how to connect. We've got all of our social media, except I didn't have Discord. It wouldn't link correctly. It may be because it's a temporary link. It only lasts for 2 days. I recommend having some sort of way to be paid, whether it's tip jar or Venmo, or, you know, all of those ways that you can send people money, buy me a coffee, that sort of thing. Because you never know. You just never know. So this is one of the hyperlink issues I had. I wanted to be able to hyperlink the images themselves because they're recognizable. I don't need to say that that's Facebook. We all know it's Facebook. If you don't, then you probably aren't interested anyway. I tried hyperlinking the image, didn't work. I tried hyperlinking a clear shape, didn't work. I tried hyperlinking text in clear over the image, and it worked as far as the space goes, but when I would leave Whiteboard and then come back in, it would turn it back into the hyperlink blue. So I finally just gave up and went ahead and put the word Facebook and hyperlinked that. It's not in the hyperlink blue because that doesn't really go with our brand very well. So I just changed it to white because it looks prettier. If I had to redo this back to the Discord thing, and I think this is what I say here, I'll probably put a link to this presentation in the YouTube notes. If I had more time, I would have created a section for Discord because we are promoting that, and I wanted it to be another way that people could interact with us, because that's one of the things I do like about Outland is, you know, our whole thing is transmedia, where you can, we create worlds of multimedia that tell different stories. And in that, you know, vein, in that spirit, there are different ways to interact with us too. So eventually I'd like to be different things on different social media. Right now we just don't have the budget for that, which is fine. But eventually I would like more specialized media, like maybe working like with Discord, you know, it's more specialized than just the generic Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, which anybody is going to be interested in. Discord is more toward our target audience. So yeah. Okay, let's move me back down. Oh, no, stop that. There we go. Okay, so the next section you can see over here, the next slide, as you will, slide 5, was our booth schedule. So I made it into a grid in part because it gave me a color block, which is good for breaking up the visual part of it. It's a large part in the overview, so it's got some hierarchy, and we do want them to see what's going on, and we want them to, you know, like realize that's important. We have these things going on. So because we're a publisher and we have so many artists and authors that we work with, we were able to have some of them in the booth. This is what's super cool is, so a lot of times a booth is like just one artist or maybe 2 or 3 people who are selling their stuff or whatever. Because we're a publisher, we have so many that we work with, like we could have more. And it worked so well with our virtual booth that we're going to strive for that in our physical booth at Planet Comic-Con. So we have artists and authors local to Kansas City area. I'm 4 hours away, which is relatively local. That we're you know, going to be welcoming them if they can come into the con and sit at the table for a while. That's great. We can only have so many vendor passes, but you know, anyway. And then we even have a couple who are coming in from New York, Claire and Carlos, who did the play testing. So we're going to have them there. And it was such a cool experience to have different people that we work with there. One, because it just made the experience more rich. If anybody came in, they could talk to, you know, so many of the people involved in different projects at different levels. So if you were an artist or an author yourself, or just interested in comics, or just interested in games, like there's probably going to be somebody there that can talk to you about it and geek out, or be very informative, or help you like establish a network. Like, it's really cool. So we're doing that for our in-person too. The other thing that was really cool about it is we work with people all around the world who we've never met. And most of them we haven't even gotten on video calls with. I find it, as a one person, me, because I am a little crazy this way, I find it very useful to have a video call with somebody just to see how they talk and how, I don't know, it just makes it cooler. So I've done video calls. I had actually met more than some of my other team members had. So we were able to kind of hang out and just talk. And sometimes we talked business, and sometimes we talked about, you know, nerdy stuff. Like we just would talk. We talked about the birds in the background because I like to sit outside when I'm on these. So yeah, it was really cool. So anyway, I deviate a little bit, but back to the booth schedule. One, I really liked people being in there. I liked letting people know when they would be there. If we had more time, if I had more time to prepare, I would have also promoted it on social media. I would have done a little bit more promoting outside of our accounts too, but I didn't. So this was good. Planet Comic-Con will be better. I'm excited. This grid format that I have too also allowed me to do pretty visuals within the grid format. As you can see, I got to show off not only our beautiful artwork, but how different our artwork can be. So this was a great selection. It just happened this way because it shows very different types of artwork. So let's see, I think, yes. Okay, so you see these circles. These are Post-its that I put down before I had the opportunity to expand upon the authors. Ideally, I said this before, I would have prepared off to the side author information, you know, bio, ways to connect, photo, and then the works that they have worked on with Outland, maybe some of their other works, their website, and then highlighting whatever we're highlighting here. But I just, you know, it was kind of last minute, so I just copy and pasted into a Post-it and made sure I led the conversation. Let's see. Okay, so that first part was kind of an about us upfront part. Now anybody who comes to our booth later on in their booth, that they're like, I really like what these people have, I want to connect with them, then they can be like, I know where to do that. Or this stuff is really cool. I wonder if the person from this publication that looks really interesting is on their booth schedule. So again, it's got a big visual hierarchy. It's easier to find, and it's in the first section where I talk about us. Even if the viewer doesn't consciously think about that, sorry for any background noise, even if the viewer doesn't consciously think about that, it's still in their brain, and it's more likely that they're going to be able to find it than if I just had things randomly. Okay, so the next section is when I start talking about the publication. I told you my frustrations with the hyperlinks, and one of the solutions I found was to just go ahead and hyperlink text. So I have the visual of our publications, and then I have the text above it or below it hyperlinked. I felt like it was still a little ambiguous, so I made this direction thing, and I made it into its own area. It's pretty simple. Not happy with it. I think it was a poor choice. It was ugly. It didn't load well because of how it was constructed. The word titles that I used is ambiguous because if you say click on the titles to get to the product page, you think click on the book, which wasn't an option at all. It would have, you know, that hyperlink in the top right corner. So I'm not sure how I would change it, but maybe just make it all one visual instead of a combination of a Canva arrow visual, which I copy and pasted twice, and then the square is from the whiteboard, and the text is from the whiteboard, you know, all of that. Probably would have just done one image, but I don't know. I would like to see that change so that you can hyperlink the image without the little icon. Okay, so this next section is all about the books, or not the books, the product, the publications, etc. I have new releases, and I had one area that was the whole new releases, so that you could see there are 7 things coming out this year. And look, 3 of them are called Apex, like, interesting. But then I made each of those lines a section so that when you go, because with this whole new releases section, the way it filled your screen, it was hard to read and see the titles. So I made each one of the lines, as, you know, the rows, a section, so it would be closer up. It would fill your screen with this beautiful artwork, and you could click on the titles. So that section's looks like 7, 8, and 9. And then I went from new releases, stuff we just came out with the last 3 months or so, to coming. Now, remember, I said target audience several times, and anytime you talk to me about creating a brand and identity, I will talk to you about target audience, because it's the most important thing. And then what you're selling is the second most important thing, because your target audience feeds into what you're selling. And then, of course, how you're selling it. This is a convention focused on Black and Indigenous people of color, creatives. We knew that. We knew it was mostly Black. And we knew that Dedrin Sneed is very well known in the Black community. And most of them know of him. Many of them have already read his Sorghum and Spear series of comics. So like, we wanted to highlight that. And we have another really cool publication coming out called Night of the Vegan, also written by Black creators. Or made by Black creators. So we wanted to highlight them. We wanted to honor them. We want more diversity in our creators and in our characters. So like, we wanted to say, we're here for you. Like, we have stuff for you that we know you'll be interested in. And of course they were. Something I didn't do is we're looking for an RPG writer for Sorghum and Spear, and I have it later in the booth, but I wish I'd had that here too. Like, want to be a part of this project, we have this. So we have a lot of publications coming in this year, but our target audience would be most likely to buy these or to be interested in them and click through to them. So we put them there. Now, I want to go back to this thinking about your target audience isn't manipulation. It's who is going to be here and what do they want? Like, what do they want? They want, and this happened over and over, like having conversations with the people there, because I would go to other booths and I would meet people. They want publications by Black creators about Black characters. That's what they want. And that's a good thing. That's awesome. And we want to help make those projects happen. We're a project management company, basically. So we want to make sure that Dedrin gets his stuff out there and that he is successful and that he has other Black creators that are telling these Black stories with him, alongside him. So like, we want those things for them, and they want those things for them. And like, we're just in agreement. We're just making sure they see it as soon as possible, because that's what you should do. You should always make it as easy as possible, as interesting as possible. And in fact, it's possible we probably should have put this up front somehow, so that it was even bigger, more visible, but I don't know. I'll have to think about that. So we highlighted those. We do have other Black authors, and we have Black artists that we could feature. Their publications are older, and so we didn't highlight them, and I didn't have a whole lot of time. If I'd had more time to ruminate about it, I would have looked for a way to do it that wasn't cheesy and manipulative. Like, it's like, hey, you guys are Black, we've got some Black people. That's not what I want to do. But I also want to honor and say we welcome Black creators, and you know, like, we want to work with more. So it's a challenging place to be, not only on screen, you know, in our publication, on our website, in our booth, but inside too, just constantly making sure that we're not just jumping at reactions, but we're thinking what is truly honorable to the individuals and the groups that they represent. So yeah, but know your target audience and give them what they want. So then the rest of the releases coming in 2021 had those set up much like the new releases. Again, I made different sections out of each of the rows so that you could see them up closer, and you could see, but you also saw all of them together. So you can see the variety in artwork. One of the other things I really don't like about the way I set up my booth is that, gosh, I hope this is recording, is that I wanted consistency, but I also needed a way to show that, like, we've got Hopeless Maine, the comic series, and Hopeless Maine, the RPG. And you can't really tell there's a difference unless you read the title, which is pretty small. And Rogues is an RPG, now Thingy's a card game, and these are novels, you know, and you can't really see that. Like, I wanted consistency visually, and it was easier than trying to find a way to put the different products up there to show what they were. I think that next time I would use, like on our website, we've got mock-ups. I'd probably use mock-ups. They're more interesting anyway. And they show what the actual product is. So, and then we have coming soon to Kickstarter. And I put a reminder, like, if you want more information about this, click on the titles. Again, that was ambiguous and not even accurate for these two things. So, okay, so that section was our publications. Again, I just focused on what's most recently come out, what's coming up in 2021 with a hyper focus on the Black creators and then the Kickstarters. And it's another call to action. Yeah, that. Okay, now from here, it's going to take you across the page over to Worldsmiths. So we have a new YouTube video series called Worldsmiths, and they are interviews with our creators. And we've only done one. But we've got several that are being talked about. One of them's been recorded and just needs to be edited. So, like, there's more coming for sure. I put this on here, one, because again, what I love about Outland is we have so many different ways of coming into a world. And this is yet another way to do that. And it honors our creators, and it just kind of reinforces that multimedia thing. It gives people more ways to connect, etc. So, and the logo is beautiful, which I partially designed. Okay, I just used Canva font and then put our O logo in there. But I think it's really pretty. You know, it's another way of showing Ian's stuff, and another way of showing Althingi, and it's another way of showing Yasuke. You know, it's just another way of showing the same thing over again, which is important in marketing. Let's see. Oh yeah, right now our Worldsmiths isn't quite diverse. The ones we have lined up and the one we already have are all men working on a woman. We just our publication schedule at this time. I'm focusing on things that are coming out soon or kickstarting soon. And we just don't have any female creators yet. So next year is going to be awesome though for diversity. Okay, so then we have, right next to that, we have Outland Worlds, which this is our whole thing. And it's really hard to like encompass that without talking to someone. And even once you talk to someone, it's hard to understand. And the best way to show it is by example. And we only have one world really formed at this point. So our Outland Worlds are multimedia ways of entering into the world of, in this case, Vikingverse. So Ian Stewart Sharp is creator of Vikingverse. We have 2 novels, now 4 comics, which are being made into a graphic novel set, and an Old Norse for modern times. We're creating games. We've got other things in the works. So that is, Vikingverse is our first fleshed out world. And they're all different stories. every one of them is a different story. It's a different way of coming to this world. And it's modern, it's an alternative reality where Viking culture took over more than Anglo-Saxon culture, Roman culture. I can't remember what the alternative was, but you know, so it's like everything's more Viking. So it's sci-fi, fantasy type stuff. So yeah, so there's different ways of entering into, including an Old Norse phrase book, but it's like modern stuff, like if you were talking about video games or YouTube or something like that, different catchphrases from movies and that sort of thing. So it's just a different way of entering into this world and experiencing this world. So that one, if you want more stories, which think of your favorite universe and you want more stories and you think about all the different ways to access them, you know, whether it's a movie franchise that came from a comic franchise that also has TV series now that are all kind of different and lend themselves to different types of storytelling. Like that's the same type of concept where I want more of that. Well, we've got different ways for you to experience it. So yay. So anyway, I do have a bunch of words in here. People aren't going to read them because people don't read. That's fine. But it is, the logo itself is beautiful. It's reinforcement of what we do. The logo for a Viking verse, which is on another page, I think, but it's right here. It's not part of the area because I wanted to hone in on the words so people could actually read the words. But visually it breaks up the board. Let's see. Oh, it's part of our core values to have transmedia. And that transmedia worlds concept is what sets us apart from other indie publishers. Ian, when he was in, like if anybody had said, you know, had come by, I could have been like, yeah, if you want to hear more about his worlds and the worlds that we're creating, and I could have directed them to slide 17. Yet another way to see his IP. Yeah, so there were a lot of reasons, not just the basic information, but a lot of functions for that. And then I have help wanted sign. I knew that a lot of people who came by were probably going to be people from other booths. And so I wanted to make sure that I had ways for them to connect. And we need these people anyway. So we need a Black RPG writer, someone who specifically writes in D&D 5e. So I have that on there, sensitivity readers, which is kind of an ongoing list that we're keeping. And because there's so many different kinds of sensitivity readers, like, you know, a Black woman or a man in a wheelchair, or, you know, like, or a Black woman in a wheelchair, you know, like there are different individuals from groups and intersectional groups that having them read, knowing what they're looking for is important to us. Because, like, for instance, one of our authors, Gwendolyn Nix, she wrote about some of the Native tribes in New York. And so we had a sensitivity reader to make sure that we were honoring them as well. So yeah, so we're constantly looking for sensitivity readers. And if anybody knew any, like, that's also a great way for us to make sure that people of color and in other underrepresented groups are getting paid to do work. And then we need reviewers, people who do it like as a thing, and then people who do it casually too. So I had two different categories. So again, target audience, we know who's there, and we know what, you know, we want to get from being there. I think I also could have had a section on, like, if you're interested in submitting, we have something on our page, and we did direct someone to go to our submissions page, but I could have had something on here too, and then for more information, see our website. Okay, and then I told you about those extra sections. They weren't on the original, and I built them as we were running, kind of like building the plane while you're flying type of thing. So we had a play test, and Carlos drew cards. It's got kind of a tarot feel to it. So I'm going to talk about the next slide, so I'll go back. Galefire, this right here, we don't have a lot developed for it yet, and I don't have access to it. Marketing is the last one to get access to everything because we don't want it unless it's finished, right? but since Michael was in the booth the whole time, I wanted to make sure that if he had a conversation with anybody, there was a way to get to his stuff. Koji came and talked to us for an hour, and he's the creator of Yasuke. So the cover is striking, but I also wanted to show the interior just to show kind of what it looks like. Again, I would have liked to have had those prepared ahead of time with all the bio information and links and all of that, but I didn't. So the Negocios Infernales is got a tarot feel to it. Like you play cards and the cards are ominous feeling, but they're really just inspiration prompts. And so it's an RPG, it's a very narrative-based RPG, and you draw cards and you create your character based on that. And then the characters interact with each other and then they go on this adventure and that you make up basically. So he drew the cards specifically for this con, and I think he may have had to filter some out because some are more challenging than others to use. But they were all set up. And then I had the titles, you may have noticed in other screens. Yeah, forget it. The titles originally said player 1, player 2, so that they could put their names in there or they could put their character names in there. That would have actually been fun, but everything else was locked. Didn't say this. When you create a thing and put it in on the whiteboard, or when you create an area, you can lock it and nobody else can touch it, not even someone on your team. And I don't know if that's different. I don't know. Yeah, I was going to say something, but I think it'd be too confusing for me to get to it. But anyway, so nobody else can change it. So I wanted to make the names editable, but everything else was locked. You couldn't move it. So, and then there's also a character sheet, and it's rudimentary because we're just in development for this game so far. It's to the right of the game, so you can access it, but it's not going to be when you click through the areas. It's not going to be part of that. Another part that's not part of, it doesn't have an area, is the booth hosts. I wasn't 100% sure who was going to be there when I created this. There ended up being, I mean, Jeremy was there, our director was there almost the whole time. Or I would have added him, and I would also have liked to have added links and kind of like, I mean, we're all freelance in addition to working for Outland, so I would have liked to have that too. Yeah, so it's not an area, but if somebody had asked, you know, or if they just come across it, we could have pointed it out to them, would have liked more information. Okay, so that's basically my booth. What it looks like and what the functions of each section are. But there's more to it than just this visual. I could have made this booth like this, walked away, nobody stands at the booth, and not interact with anybody anywhere. And that would have been that. But that's not where the power was, in my opinion. I think one of the greatest things about a convention is, well, I know for Planet Comic-Con, when I've gone to that one, is, or in any other convention, is talking to the people and networking and meeting new people. I love meeting artists and authors. Like, that's not my profession, but I really enjoy just meeting with creatives. And I wanted to have all this set up for a structure that we could refer to, but it is not the thing. So like our booth physically at Planet Comic-Con will be attractive, it will be branded, we'll have all the stuff there, we'll sell stuff, no doubt about it. But the most important, in my opinion, is the networking and the establishing relationships with individuals. Because you get a good relationship with a customer and they're going to buy your stuff for their friends and family. They're going to recommend you. They're going to follow you. They're going to, you know, feed into your algorithm. Like there's power in just one person. When you do it right and you do it over and over and over again, then you have more and more and more people. And one of the cool things about Outland, and I think it was really reestablished at this con, is that we're a group of people and we're a collaborative group of creatives that work together to create some really awesome stuff. And even if this author and this author are on the same project, like being part of Outland is part of it. And we want our readers, customers, but our readers to engage with us on multiple levels. So we can have this visual structure. We can have the booth set up and it'd be really cool, but it's that interaction that really is the powerful part of it. So a few ways we interacted. One, I briefly coached the other hosts. Well, I tried to be there as much as I could just because I had in my mind what I wanted to do. Again, if I'd had more time, I would have made it I would have made a script and I would have said, these are the key points. These are what we're going for. Don't read the script. Don't recite it. Just, make sure you touch on these things. But I didn't. So I tried to stay in the booth most of the time or go network. But whenever we heard the knock knock, that lets you know that somebody came into your booth, they usually don't have their mic and video on, but you'll see the icon in the top left corner. And I would just say, hey, welcome to our booth. We're Outland Entertainment. We're an indie publisher. Go ahead and put it on presentation mode so that you can go through our booth. It's the easiest way to navigate. We have so-and-so here with us. He's the author of blah, blah, blah. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask him. Feel free to put on your mic and your camera just to chat. Let us know if you need anything. Every time somebody came in, which was it wasn't very many times, I did that spiel. And we had some really cool conversations, people coming in or when I went to other booths, there were really cool conversations going on. Some were silly, some were really intense about race and publishing. Some of them were just about publishing in general. Some of them were technique, like art technique, just all kinds of conversations. So being present, having someone present and engaged or ready to engage is really important. Another way that I engaged, was using the chat. So the general chat goes out to everybody. So you don't want to do a personal conversation. Somebody did. They were like, hey, Linda, nice to see you, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, you can directly message her. But you could message everybody in the chat. And then I mentioned this before. So you've got the general chat, which is everybody in the con. You've got the table chat with just the people at your table, and then you can chat with people individually. And I use that individual chat with my colleagues. And then in conversation with people, I would send them a link or whatever that I didn't, people I didn't know. So I use the general chat for announcements, and here are two examples. So, we have a playtest coming up in so much time. I would have liked to have prepared those ahead of time so I could be more thorough, because I kept forgetting to put Outland Entertainment because it's just my name. And then also when I went and visited a booth, and I thought it was really cool, Bad Waifu was this one booth. I was like, this is amazing. Everybody needs to come here. What I didn't realize is she didn't need my help. People flocked to her. I'm not exactly sure why, but I think it's because she is just really cool and attractive, and Bad Waifu has some connotations. So I think that people are like, yeah, I'm interested in seeing what that's about. So, but for the record, Bad Waifu is really cool because they're creating women's clothing that aren't just t-shirts or sweatshirts. And they have in development women's blouses that are nerd stuff, which is great, because I woke up that morning thinking, what could I wear that's professional and nerdy? And I didn't really have anything. I have jewelry that looks I'm getting off topic, but anyway. So that's one of the ways we use the chat when we had an event coming up. If we had a conversation about something in particular that I thought people might be interested in, I would have said, hey, we're talking about marketing yourself as an author, stop on by, or something like that. Oh, I guess that's the last slide. Okay, so the other way, I need to create two slides for this presentation. One is welcoming people and interacting with them. And the other one is going out to other booths. That is so important. It's one of the best things about the con. It's good for networking. It's good for business. If you're an artist and you want people to know about you, you go talk to them. Don't wait for them to come talk to you, because they probably won't, because they're waiting for somebody to come talk to them. If in real life, it's a lot easier to have something to give them, like a handbill size something, or a business card. But virtually, you know, have a pitch, have an elevator pitch, make it casual, have your contact information ready so you can message it to them. It's better to do it not in this chat, because if possible, because you can't, I can never access all that again, as far as I know. So that's just gone. But you know, if you can get their Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or email, that's better. It's more permanent. Oh, by the way, you can also save your conversation. So I could actually download the entire chat, general chat or individual chats or booth chat. So, and I did with my director, just because I was like, hey, you need to go to this booth. I think this is really cool. We should think about this and that sort of thing. So yeah, and having your goals in mind, knowing like if there's someone in particular you want to talk to, absolutely, like, no, this is exactly what I want before you get there. But if it's just, you're just going to booths in general, you know, maybe you want to promote your own stuff. And so find a way to connect to that. Or maybe you're looking for an artist, or like we were looking for an RPG writer. There were no booths that were RPGs, but when we talked to the authors, you know, we're like, hey, do you or someone you know write RPG and D&D 5e? And usually they didn't know what we were talking about, but yeah, so do that. So you've got the visual table, you've got the chats, and you've got welcoming people and engaging with them and giving them opportunities to engage through the table, and then going out and talking to people. So of course, I mean, there are lots of different elements too, like being on a panel, which is something we're looking at for Planet Comic-Con. It's good for promotion, it's good for networking. It's good for you to have something different to do. And then enjoying yourself is really important too. Go look at the stuff that you like and buy some books for your kids and that sort of thing. So this was super long. I'm going to try to put times in the comments or in the description so that you know where to go for each thing. But if you have any questions, just go ahead and put them on there. And I appreciate your time. Hope this was helpful. And I hope to see you at Planet Comic-Con. If you'd like a longer conversation, or if you want to hire me to help you develop a booth or to develop a booth, I would love that too. So go ahead and reach out to me on YouTube or social media. I'm not on Facebook. Facebook disabled me. But everything else, I'm Tara Cloud Clark, LinkedIn, Twitter. Although I don't check LinkedIn because it's boring. Instagram. Yeah. So thank you. Bye.